Tonight, we journey back, way back, thousands of years to the frozen fjords of ancient Scandinavia, where your life begins not with peace, but with violence. You are not just anyone. You are you, reborn in another age, broader shoulders, harsher breath, worse hygiene, and a destiny that is both feared and whispered about, the life of a berserker. You are not born into comfort, but into frost, fire, and a brutal world where survival is earned by the swing of a blade and the strength of a scream. Life here is short and merciless. There's an even chance you won't see your sixth winter. Sickness, starvation, or a drunk uncle with an axe could end it early. But if you survive, your story becomes something raw and untamed. Your first breath is filled with smoke, cold air, and the scent of blood. Your mother screams while your father paces outside the hut like a caged wolf, sharpening a bone-handled knife more from nerves than necessity. There are no hospital lights here, only moss, dirt, and the silent eyes of the old gods peering through cracks in the walls. When you cry for the first time, someone murmurs that you sound like a raven's call, ominous. An elder marks your chest with soot and mutters to Odin, perhaps blessing you, perhaps warning him. You are named after a star that flared during a solar storm, something strange, bright, and unforgettable. Some whisper that you are chosen. Others that you are cursed. Either way, your life is set apart from the moment you arrive. Your childhood is not one of toys but of iron and firelight. You watch your mother stitch furs with bone needles and your father return from raids bloodied and silent, carrying sacks filled with silver and gilt. The village around you smells of smoke, salt, and sweat. Dogs snarl, chickens roam wild, and every adult carries both a blade and a story about how they got their scars. You grow barefoot among pine needles and stones, hardened by the land that birthed you. And even as a child, one day, when you're barely 6, you kneel by a frozen stream, trying to crack the ice. A growl stops you cold. You turn, and a bear stares back, massive, breathing clouds into the air. You freeze. It doesn't move. For some reason, you start to breathe in rhythm with it, slow, heavy, even. After a moment, it turns and leaves. Your uncle calls it a sign. The beast is in you, he says. Could be a gift. Could be a curse. By 8, you are training with wooden swords, bruised and bloodied in the dirt. You fight older boys and win not with strength but with patience. There's a look in your eyes that unsettles them. Once, you break a boy's nose, and when his father complains, your father shrugs and says, he fought back. That's enough. Nights are filled with stories told beneath the aurora, of frost giants, sea monsters, and warriors who can speak to ravens. A drunken elder tells you your fate glows red in the threads of destiny. You don't know what it means, but it sounds like trouble. Training is brutal. You swing birch spears until your hands blister, run barefoot through snow, and learn to take blows without crying. When you do cry once, they leave you alone in the woods overnight, to find courage or die trying. You never cry again. Your teacher, Ulf, the wolf, limps from an old spear wound and growls his wisdom between breaths. Battle is music, he tells you. Not flutes. Drums. Feel your enemy's rhythm before you strike. Rage is not yours, it flows through you. You don't understand yet, but you nod. By 10, your nose has broken twice, your teeth are chipped, and you carry a stare that makes grown men uneasy. Winter training becomes crueler. You're forced to submerge under icy water to learn stillness. You spar until your arms shake and your lungs scream. One day, Ulf hands you a goat's heart and orders you to eat it raw. You hesitate. The shame burns worse than the taste. When it's done, he nods and mutters, "Better than being eaten by worse." You don't ask what that means. You grow into your body, taller, broader, your voice deep and rough. The village begins to whisper when you pass. Some call you the young bear. You begin to wake in the night drenched in sweat, fists clenched, the echoes of growls in your throat. You dream of storms, of fire, of your body running naked under the moonlight. The beast inside is waking. Then one morning, the horn sounds. Short, sharp, ceremonial. You're dragged from your bed and handed a rough cloak. Outside, the village is silent under falling snow. The elders stand near the longhouse, faces smeared with ash. You already know what this is, the nameless ritual whispered about for years. The rite of blood and bark. They lead you into the forest with 9 others, each carrying a wooden bowl filled with herbs and something that smells like rot. At the clearing stands Ulf beside a barkless tree, pale and ghostly in the dawn. Animal skins lie piled at his feet. There are no words. You are given a dull knife and told to cut your palm. Your blood stains the white wood, and the tree seems to drink it. Then you're handed a piece of raw meat, still warm, maybe even twitching. You eat it in silence. The fire is lit, the smoke thick with strange herbs, and your vision begins to fracture. The world bends. Shadows crawl. The forest breathes. You see shapes made of antlers and flame, hear voices whisper your name. The sky turns red. The tree pulses like a heart. You fall to your knees as the roar fills your skull. You see yourself wearing a bear's head, screaming not in pain, but in awakening. A great bear of stars and frost appears before you and presses itself into your soul. The world collapses into darkness. When you awaken, your hand is crusted with blood, your bowl shattered, your breath shallow. Ulf crouches beside you. You lived, he says quietly. Not everyone did. You're handed your bare skin, real, heavy, still smelling of wild musk, and told to wear it, bleed into it, and sleep beneath it. It is not clothing. It is your bond. You are now something between man and beast. For days you lie still, recovering, your dreams filled with the bear's breath and the echo of drums. The others are hollow-eyed and changed. None of you speak of what you saw. You have crossed a threshold. You are no longer a boy from a frostbitten village. You are a berserker in training, the living embodiment of rage and spirit, dangerous, ancient, unstoppable. When you finally return, she is waiting, the village seer, cloaked in feathers and bone, eyes pale as ice. She studies you, her cracked lips parting into a faint smile. It fits, she whispers, nodding toward the bare pelt on your shoulders. Not yet completely, but soon. And deep down, you know she's right. The beast within you isn't done. It's only sleeping, waiting for the call of war to wake again. The nights grow longer after your initiation, the stars sharp against the black sky like shards of frozen glass. You move differently now, heavier, slower, but more deliberate. The bear pelt clings to you like a second skin, carrying the scent of blood, smoke, and the wilderness itself. You don't dream the same way anymore. When you sleep, you see the world through another set of eyes, vast, low to the ground, senses heightened. You smell storms before they arrive. You hear the crunch of bones under snow. Sometimes you wake up and your nails are caked in dirt, your breath steaming as if you've been running through the woods. The villagers avoid you in quiet ways. They don't say it, but they fear you. Children stop their games when you walk by. Women murmur prayers under their breath. Even dogs, those half-wolves of the north, watch you with wary eyes. Ulf tells you not to mind. Fear is a kind of respect, he grunts, tossing a chunk of frozen bread into the fire. Training shifts into survival. You hunt through ice storms, your bare feet sinking into snowdrifts. You track deer and wolves by scent, not sight. When the hunger bites, you eat roots, bark, and once, the heart of a fox still warm in your hands. You learn to move without sound, to strike without warning. Your hands harden into tools of killing. And deep within, the animal stirs. It doesn't roar. It hums, a low, steady vibration beneath your ribs. The first raid comes in spring, when the sea thaws enough to carry the dragon-headed ships across the fjord. The longboats are carved from blackened pine, their sails painted red like open wounds. The air smells of salt, pitch, and anticipation. You stand among the warriors, younger than most, but already wearing your bare skin, already marked by something older than courage. The others glance at you from the corners of their eyes, whispering. They've heard stories, of your initiation, of the night the gods themselves took your breath. They call you Bjornling, the bear's son. You don't deny it. You don't confirm it either. You just tighten the leather straps on your wrist and stare at the horizon, where smoke will soon rise. The sea voyage is brutal. The wind claws at your face, freezing salt into your lashes. The waves slam against the hull like angry fists. The oars creak, your muscles burn, but you don't stop. You move in rhythm with the others, stroke, pull, breathe, strike, the same rhythm Ulf taught you. Battle is music, and this is the drumbeat before the storm. When the coastline appears, jagged and gray, your heart begins to pound. Not from fear, that left you long ago, but from something else, something raw and ancient. You feel your skin prickle, your vision narrow. The world around you sharpens, every sound louder, every smell stronger. You taste metal on your tongue. The berserker state, the trance, begins to stir. The raid happens fast. The village is small, peaceful, unprepared. Smoke rises as torches hit thatched roofs. You leap from the ship, feet sinking into cold surf, axe in hand, bare pelt whipping in the wind. Your roar tears through the air, deep, guttural, primal. You don't remember what happens next in sequence. Only flashes. A face screaming. The crunch of bone. The heat of fire on your skin. You are not you anymore. You are the storm. When it's over, you stand among the wreckage, your axe red, your breath ragged. The others look at you with awe and unease. One warrior mutters that he saw you take 3 arrows without flinching. Another swears he saw your eyes glow gold in the firelight. You don't correct them. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're not. But when you look at your hands, you don't feel triumph, only emptiness. That night, you sit by the sea, watching the tide wash away the blood. The moon is high, cold, perfect. Ulf limps over, lowering himself beside you. You crossed another line today, he says. Most men break the first time they kill. You didn't. His tone isn't proud, it's almost sad. That's the gift. And the curse. You stay silent. Somewhere inside, you feel the bear stirring again, restless, hungry. The raids continue. Summers turn to winters, and you lose count of how many shores you've bled upon. You see distant lands, stone cities, burning fields, gold that melts in the sun. You sleep on decks slick with sea spray and dream of nothing but claws and fire. You've become what they always said you would, a berserker, a living weapon, half man, half myth. And yet, in quiet moments, when the fires die and the songs fade, you wonder if the gods still remember your name, or if you've become just another ghost of their amusement. Years pass. Ulf grows older, his limp worse, but his eyes still sharp. One night, during a feast after a victorious raid, he leans close and says, "You've learned to fight. Now learn to stop," you tell him. He shakes his head. That's why most die before 30. You both fall silent. Somewhere beyond the firelight, wolves howl. You realize they sound almost human. Later that night, you wander alone into the forest. Snow falls like ash. You kneel beside a frozen stream, the same place where, years ago, a bear once stared into your soul. You stare into the ice, and for a moment, your reflection ripples. The face staring back isn't human. It's fur, teeth, and eyes like burning coals. You don't flinch. You just breathe. Slow. Heavy. The way you did back then. You understand now. The berserker is not about rage. It's about surrender, letting the wild within you rise, not to destroy, but to survive. To exist in a world where men are beasts and gods demand blood. You stand, axe in hand, the moonlight slicing across your bare pelt. Somewhere far away, you hear the horns of war calling again. And this time, you don't hesitate. You are ready. You are the storm. You are the berserker. Years roll like waves crashing against the same doomed shore. Your body grows heavier, marked by scars that never quite heal. Some nights you wake to phantom screams, not of enemies, but of brothers you can no longer name. The raids blur together, fire after fire, blood after blood, until even victory begins to taste like ash. The young warriors now look at you as you once looked at Ulf, with awe and quiet fear. They whisper tales that stretch beyond truth, that your rage calls storms, that Odin himself once walked beside you. You do not correct them. Myths are all that's left when memory fades. Ulf dies in winter. Not in battle, but in his sleep, as quietly as snow falling. You bury him under the northern pines, his axe crossed over his chest, his bare pelt wrapped tight. The others sing the old songs, but you can barely speak. His absence is louder than war drums. That night, you sit by the frozen sea, staring into the endless dark. You remember his last words, "Learn to stop." You never understood them, until now. The silence feels heavier than battle ever did. You realize that rage has kept you alive, but it has also stolen everything else. Seasons change, but your heart does not. When the next call to arms comes, you no longer feel the same fire. Still, you go, out of duty, out of habit, out of the hollow ache that refuses to let you rest. The village you raid this time is small, poor, defenseless. You break through their wooden gates like thunder, the berserker within you roaring awake one final time. But then, amid the chaos, you see something, a boy, no older than you were when Ulf found you, clutching a broken spear, his eyes wide with terror. He doesn't run. He just stands there, shaking, staring up at the monster you've become. And in that instant, everything stops. The noise, the fire, the blood. You see yourself through the boy's eyes, not a warrior, not a man, but a beast wrapped in the skin of what once was human. The bear spirit growls inside you, confused, restless, wanting to strike. But your hands lower the axe. You turn away. For the first time, the battle ends without death. The others don't understand. They call it weakness. You call it peace. That night, you vanish into the mountains. Some say you went mad. Others say you became one with the gods. You walk for days through snow and silence until you find an old cave high above the fjord. Inside, you light no fire. You simply sit, breathing, remembering, letting the cold seep into your bones. The bear spirit inside you grows quieter, as if finally satisfied. You think of Ulf. You think of the boy. You think of all the names and faces that drifted away in the storm of your life. You feel no regret, only a strange, deep calm, like the sea after a long war. Years later, travelers will find your cave. They'll discover bones, a rusted axe, and a bear skull carved with runes. They'll whisper that the berserker didn't die, that he became something else, something eternal. When storms break over the mountains, some still claim to hear a roar carried by the wind, not of anger, but of freedom. The bear spirit lives on, guarding the north, a reminder that savagery and serenity often share the same heart. And so your legend endures. Children grow up hearing your name, men carve your likeness into shields, and skalds sing of your battles beside Odin's hall. But the truth is quieter. You were never a god. Never a demon. Just a man who went too far into the wild and found a kind of truth there, that strength without mercy is hollow, and rage without reason consumes all. In the end, when the long winter comes for everyone, they will remember your story not for the wars you fought, but for the moment you chose to walk away. Because even the fiercest berserker, they say, must one day face the beast within, and learn to forgive it. The wind howls over the cliffs. Snow falls soft as ash. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the north, the spirit of the bear still sleeps, waiting for the next soul brave enough to awaken it. Centuries have passed since the berserker vanished into the white silence of the north, but his presence lingers like a shadow cast across time. The sagas of men have grown older, their truths buried beneath the weight of myth and song. Yet when the winter winds scream through the fjords, when thunder rolls over the mountains, the people still speak his name. Not in fear, not in worship, but in awe. For the berserker was not born of gods, nor shaped by destiny. He was carved by pain, tempered by loss, and awakened by the wild beating heart of the north. The old runemasters say that men like him were the bridge between the mortal and the divine, warriors whose rage tore open the veil between worlds. But the truth is simpler, and far more human. The berserker's fury was never a gift from Odin. It was a wound, a deep, unhealed scar left by the cruelty of survival. Every swing of his axe was a cry against the cold, against fate, against the endless silence that devoured the weak. Yet in that fury, he found a kind of understanding. That strength without restraint is a curse. That courage without compassion is emptiness. In the villages that still cling to the edge of the frozen sea, the elders tell children that the berserker's spirit watches over them, not as a guardian of war, but as a silent protector. They say that when wolves circle too close to the firelight, or when men's hearts grow restless with hatred, the spirit of the bear rises from the mist to remind them what lies beyond rage. Some claim to have seen him, a towering figure in tattered furs, eyes glowing like embers, walking the ridgelines beneath the moon. But he never speaks. He simply watches, as though weighing the hearts of men. And sometimes, when storms lash the coast and the waves rise high enough to swallow ships whole, sailors say they hear a single voice carried in the wind, not a scream, not a roar, but something between the two. A call. Ancient. Endless. The sound of a man who once surrendered to his own fury and then learned to let it go. That sound, they say, is not a warning. It's a remembrance of what it means to be both beast and man. Perhaps that is why the story endures. Because every generation carries its own berserker, the untamed part of the soul that fights, breaks, and searches for meaning in the chaos. We all wear our own pelts, our own scars, our own silent rages. Some conquer them. Some are devoured by them. But those who survive, those who walk through fire and come out changed, they become something timeless. They become legends, not because of the wars they wage, but because of the peace they find after. And so, as the northern lights dance across the endless dark sky, the spirit of the berserker lives on, not in blood, not in war, but in the quiet strength of those who dare to face themselves. His axe may have rusted. His bones may have turned to dust. But his story, his savage, human, and sacred story, remains eternal. Because the berserker's life was never just about rage. It was about what comes after the rage, the stillness, the silence, and the strength to choose peace when the world demands fury. And that is why, even now, when the cold wind howls through the mountains and the forests whisper in the dark, the people of the north still say, "Beware the rage of the berserker, but respect the heart of the man he once was." As the centuries turn and kingdoms rise and crumble into dust, the story of the berserker becomes more than legend, it becomes a mirror. A mirror for every soul that has ever been torn between fury and forgiveness, between survival and surrender. His life, once written in blood and fire, now lives in whispers, the kind that travel across the fjords with the wind, the kind that sink deep into the bones of the earth. The northern people still gather by the fires in the dead of winter, the flames dancing against the black sky, and tell his tale not as history, but as a lesson. They speak of the man who lost himself to rage and found meaning only when he laid his weapon down. They speak of a warrior who was never truly fighting others, only the storm within. And perhaps, that storm still lives on, not just in the north, but in all of us. For every heart carries its own battlefield, every soul hides its own beast. We are all born with something wild inside us. Something that wants to fight, to survive, to be heard. But as the berserker learned in his final days, true strength is not in domination, nor in endless conquest. It is in restraint. It is in knowing when to let go, when to lay down the axe, when to face the quiet and not be afraid of it. That is where the gods are found, not in war cries, but in silence after the storm. They say that when the aurora burns brightest, painting the heavens in green and gold, that is when the berserker walks once more. Not as a warrior, but as a spirit of balance, half beast, half man, forever wandering between worlds. His eyes no longer burn with fury but with understanding, the kind that comes only after loss. To those lost in rage, he appears as a shadow among the pines, reminding them that even the fiercest fire can cool, and even the wildest heart can find peace. And so his story survives, passed from mouth to mouth, from one dying ember to the next. The elders call it a warning. The poets call it a song. But the truth is that it is both, a hymn for the broken, a cry for the strong. The berserker's life was savage, yes, but it was also sacred, a journey through violence into wisdom, through chaos into clarity. His legacy is not carved in stone or written in gold, but whispered in the hearts of those who still struggle to master themselves. When the night grows long and the winds turn cruel, remember him. Remember the man who faced the gods and found them within his own rage. Remember that every storm passes, and beyond it lies the calm. For in the end, even the wildest soul learns that peace is not the absence of battle, it is the victory after it. The sea crashes against the cliffs, the stars burn cold above, and somewhere, deep within the northern mist, the spirit of the berserker breathes once more. Watching. Waiting. Eternal. And still, the legend moves like smoke through the centuries, changing shape, changing voice, but never dying. In distant lands, where the snow no longer falls and the sea smells of other salts, travelers speak of dreams where a man in a tattered bearskin walks across the water. He does not speak, he does not threaten. He simply looks at them with eyes that remember everything. Some wake from the dream with tears on their faces, not from fear, but from recognition. They know that look, they have seen it in themselves, that moment between anger and surrender, that heartbeat where a man decides what kind of creature he will become. In quiet monasteries where scholars copy fading runes onto new parchment, his name still appears in the margins. Not as a curse, not as a god, but as a reminder. The berserker was proof that even the wildest fury can be turned toward purpose. The monks write of him the way they write of storms, a thing that destroys and renews all at once. And when they lift their quills, they whisper a small prayer, that the bear spirit, wherever it wanders, has finally found its rest. In the far north, the mountains that once echoed with war cries now sleep under blankets of snow. Pine forests have grown over battlefields. The rivers run clear again. Yet sometimes, when the sun sets low and red over the horizon, you can see strange shapes moving between the trees, large, slow, breathing against the light. The hunters stop and listen. The air thickens. For just a moment, they swear they hear footsteps heavier than any man's. Then the wind changes, and the world falls silent again. And that silence, that deep, endless silence, is where the berserker truly lives now. Not in stories or sagas, but in the space between them. In the pause before a man chooses mercy over wrath. In the breath between a scream and a prayer. He is not gone. He is the weight of the axe before it falls, the calm after the fire, the shadow that watches every man who has ever stood at the edge of his own rage. Because every age has its berserkers. Every heart knows the call of the beast. And every soul, if it is lucky, will one day understand what he did, that there is no glory in endless war, no honor in being only strong. That the greatest victory is not in slaying your enemy, but in mastering yourself. And so, when you hear the wind rising in the dark, when you feel that old anger stirring in your blood, remember the man who became legend. Remember the fire that did not burn forever. Remember that even the savage can find peace, and even the broken can become whole again. The sea sighs against the rocks. The sky burns with cold light. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of men or gods, the berserker walks on, silent, eternal, unbound. And as centuries drift like mist over forgotten fjords, your story becomes less a tale of blood and bone, and more a symbol of the untamed spirit that lives within all men. The poets who once sang of kings and gods now whisper of you in darker corners of the mead hall, where the fire burns low and eyes grow distant. They speak of the one who walked between man and monster, who carried both grace and fury in equal measure. They say your roar still rolls through the mountains when the storms break, and that those who hear it wake with their hearts pounding, unsure whether it was thunder, or memory. The villagers who live where your people once stood now tell their children that the forest belongs to no one. That if they walk too deep beneath the old pines, they might find strange tracks, not of bear, not of man, but of something in between. And if they listen carefully, they'll hear it breathing. Not as a threat, but as a warning, power must always be balanced by purpose. Generations later, the scholars who unearth fragments of your world will puzzle over what you were. A myth, a warrior, a vision. They'll write long essays about your kind, the berserkers, painting you as both savior and savage, men who could not separate the animal from the divine. They'll call it madness, ecstasy, or battle trance. They'll call it primitive, even cruel. But none of them will understand the truth, that it wasn't rage that made you, it was love, fierce, protective, eternal. Love for your people, for your gods, for the frozen land that birthed you. You fought not for conquest, but for belonging. And so your story survives, not carved into stone, but carried in blood. Every time a man stands unbroken in the face of his fear, every time someone dares to face the storm instead of hiding from it, your spirit stirs. You are there, in the veins of warriors, in the cries of the lost, in the hearts of those who refuse to kneel. The berserker never truly dies, because he was never just one man. He was an idea, a flame that passes from generation to generation, burning, changing, but never going out. Now the world has forgotten the language of your gods. The longships rot beneath the waves. The sagas are half remembered and sung by voices that no longer believe in them. But in the quiet hours, when the moon hangs like a shard of ice over the fjords, something ancient still stirs beneath the earth. The wind howls through the mountains in a voice that sounds almost human, and for a heartbeat, time folds back. Somewhere, a soul remembers what it means to be wild. Somewhere, a dreamer wakes, sweating and trembling, seeing visions of fire, snow, and a man in a bear's skin standing on a cliff, staring into the dawn. And though they will never know your name, they will feel you, in their bones, in their rage, in their courage. Because in the end, the savage life of a Viking berserker was not just a story of war. It was the story of what it means to be alive. To walk the knife's edge between creation and destruction, between beast and man. And though the world has changed, that edge remains, sharp as ever, waiting for the next soul brave enough to walk it. And as centuries drift like mist over forgotten fjords, your story becomes less a tale of blood and bone, and more a symbol of the untamed spirit that lives within all men. The poets who once sang of kings and gods now whisper of you in darker corners of the mead hall, where the fire burns low and eyes grow distant. They speak of the one who walked between man and monster, who carried both grace and fury in equal measure. They say your roar still rolls through the mountains when the storms break, and that those who hear it wake with their hearts pounding, unsure whether it was thunder, or memory. The villagers who live where your people once stood now tell their children that the forest belongs to no one. That if they walk too deep beneath the old pines, they might find strange tracks, not of bear, not of man, but of something in between. And if they listen carefully, they'll hear it breathing. Not as a threat, but as a warning, power must always be balanced by purpose. Generations later, the scholars who unearth fragments of your world will puzzle over what you were. A myth, a warrior, a vision. They'll write long essays about your kind, the berserkers, painting you as both savior and savage, men who could not separate the animal from the divine. They'll call it madness, ecstasy, or battle trance. They'll call it primitive, even cruel. But none of them will understand the truth, that it wasn't rage that made you, it was love, fierce, protective, eternal. Love for your people, for your gods, for the frozen land that birthed you. You fought not for conquest, but for belonging. And so your story survives, not carved into stone, but carried in blood. Every time a man stands unbroken in the face of his fear, every time someone dares to face the storm instead of hiding from it, your spirit stirs. You are there. In the veins of warriors, in the cries of the lost, in the hearts of those who refuse to kneel. The berserker never truly dies, because he was never just one man. He was an idea, a flame that passes from generation to generation, burning, changing, but never going out. Now the world has forgotten the language of your gods. The longships rot beneath the waves. The sagas are half remembered and sung by voices that no longer believe in them. But in the quiet hours, when the moon hangs like a shard of ice over the fjords, something ancient still stirs beneath the earth. The wind howls through the mountains in a voice that sounds almost human, and for a heartbeat, time folds back. Somewhere, a soul remembers what it means to be wild. Somewhere, a dreamer wakes, sweating and trembling, seeing visions of fire, snow, and a man in a bear's skin standing on a cliff, staring into the dawn. And though they will never know your name, they will feel you, in their bones, in their rage, in their courage. Because in the end, the savage life of a Viking berserker was not just a story of war. It was the story of what it means to be alive. To walk the knife's edge between creation and destruction, between beast and man. And though the world has changed, that edge remains, sharp as ever, waiting for the next soul brave enough to walk it. The fire fades, the wind stills, and the old gods whisper your name one last time, carried away on the breath of eternity. And so the fire dies, the last spark fading into the dark like a memory sinking beneath the snow. The night grows still again, the kind of stillness that feels almost holy. It's as if the land itself has taken a long breath and finally let it go. The world moves on, as it always does, but something remains. A pulse. A story. A name whispered by the wind that no one quite remembers, yet everyone somehow feels. The berserker is gone, and yet, he is everywhere. His spirit lingers in the crash of the ocean against the rocks, in the roar of thunder across the sky, in the fierce cry of a man defending what he loves. He's in every heart that refuses to break, in every soul that chooses to fight even when the odds are impossible. The berserker was never just flesh and fury, he was the wild heartbeat of the human spirit, raw and unyielding, reminding us that inside the calmest of men lives a storm waiting to rise. The sagas may have ended, the ink may have dried, but the essence endures, reborn in every act of defiance, every moment of courage, every whisper of rage turned into strength. Maybe that's what it always meant to be chosen by the gods, not to rule or destroy, but to live so fiercely that even death cannot silence you. The bear sleeps now, deep within the bones of the earth, but when winter comes and the nights grow long, his dreams awaken in us. We feel them, that ancient hunger for life, that yearning to stand unbroken in a world that bends all things. And perhaps that's the truth the old gods were trying to teach all along, that savagery and serenity are not enemies, but twins, born from the same heart, destined to meet in the same fire. To live is to rage. To love is to bleed. And to die, when the time comes, is only to become part of the endless story, told again and again in the voice of the wind. So tonight, as you sit in your quiet room, far from the frozen north, listening to this tale of blood, courage, and transformation, remember that this story isn't only about a Viking. It's about you. About the battles you fight that no one sees, the storms you endure in silence, and the fire that keeps you alive when the world turns cold. Because somewhere, buried deep beneath the noise of modern life, your own berserker waits, not for war, but for awakening. The strength to face your fear, to protect what matters, to roar back at the darkness and say, I am still here. And maybe that's all the gods ever wanted, not worship, not blood, but remembrance. That their children, fierce and flawed, would still carry the spark they left behind. The fire has gone out now, but its warmth lingers. The wind hums its old song. And in the distance, across time and memory, a single heartbeat echoes, steady, powerful, eternal. The mark of the berserker. The mark of every soul brave enough to live without fear. And as the dawn finally breaks across the frozen horizon, the world is bathed in pale gold, soft light spilling over the jagged peaks and the sleeping forests, painting the scars of battle in hues of quiet redemption. The earth seems to sigh, as if it, too, remembers the rage that once tore through its soil. The blood of the past has long since faded, but its story, like the scent of rain on stone, still lingers in the air. The birds begin to sing, timid at first, as though uncertain that the storm has truly passed. But slowly, their songs rise, fragile, beautiful, defiant. Somewhere beyond the fjords, beyond the reach of men and memory, lies a solitary mound of earth covered in frost. No name marks it, no symbol of power or glory. And yet, those who pass by say that when the wind howls across the valley, it carries a sound that is not quite a whisper and not quite a growl, something in between. They say it feels alive, as though the land itself breathes. Those who listen too closely claim they hear the echo of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, the march of a man who refuses to rest even in death. The berserker still walks there, in the shadows between worlds, in the dreams of those who dare to remember him. But his legacy is not just of war. It's the legacy of will, of the unbreakable spirit that survives every winter and rises again when all else has fallen. It's in the eyes of a mother who protects her child, in the hands of a craftsman shaping steel, in the heart of a wanderer chasing the edge of the world. His fury has become our courage. His madness has become our freedom. The savagery that once burned through his veins now burns through ours, transformed, no longer destruction, but resilience. The gods may have turned their gaze elsewhere, their altars buried beneath snow and time, but they still remember him. In the halls of Valhalla, where endless feasts rage beneath banners of flame, his seat is never empty. When storms tear across the sea, Thor still raises his hammer in salute, and Odin still watches with one knowing eye, proud of the mortal who burns so brightly that even the heavens could not contain him. And down here, in our world of silence and steel, where men no longer fight with swords but with their hearts, the berserker's roar has become a whisper, yet it's one that refuses to fade. It reminds us that inside every calm surface lies an ocean of power, waiting to rise. That even in peace, there must be passion. That even in stillness, there must be fire. So when you feel lost, when the cold creeps in and your spirit trembles, remember him. Remember the man who faced gods and fate without bowing. The one who screamed into the void and made it echo back. The one who died 1,000 deaths but was never truly gone. Close your eyes, and listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet beat beneath your ribs. That rhythm is ancient. That fire is eternal. Because the berserker was never just a man. He was, and always will be, the heartbeat of those who refuse to surrender. And so, as centuries fold into dust and empires rise and fall like waves against the shore, the story of the berserker becomes legend, not written in ink, but carved into the marrow of time. His fire burns quietly now, hidden in the hearts of those who walk beneath the same northern skies. The old world has changed, swords have become memories, shields mere artifacts beneath glass, and the cries of battle replaced by the hum of modern life. Yet somewhere, deep within that noise, his spirit still breathes. In the stillness of winter nights, when snow falls without a sound and the moon hangs heavy over the world, you can almost see him. A shadow standing tall against the horizon, not as a ghost, but as a reminder. His hair moves with the wind, his eyes burn with the same defiance that once shook kingdoms, and his presence lingers like the scent of smoke after fire. He does not speak, because he doesn't need to. His silence says everything, that strength is not in rage, but in endurance, that courage is not born from victory, but from refusing to kneel when the world demands it. And as you breathe in that cold air, you feel something stir within you, something wild, ancient, and untamed. It's not anger, but power. Not madness, but purpose. The same spirit that drove him through blood and blizzard now runs quietly in your veins. It calls to you in moments of weakness, when life feels too heavy, when the world seems too cruel. It whispers, "Rise." It reminds you that even the fiercest storms must bow to the morning, and that within your chest burns the same relentless fire that once made a man defy gods. The berserker's tale is not just of fury and death, it's of rebirth. Every time someone chooses to stand tall when it would be easier to fall, his story begins again. Every time a heart refuses to break under pressure, the saga continues. He lives in the quiet strength of humanity, in the father who works through the night, in the soldier who walks into battle knowing he might not return, in the child who dreams of becoming more than the world expects. His legend has left the battlefield and found its home in every act of silent bravery. And as the northern lights shimmer above the frozen sea, painting the sky with streaks of green and violet, you realize, this is not the end. It never was. Legends don't end, they transform. The berserker was born of chaos, shaped by war, and consumed by rage. But he was reborn through the stories told in whispers by firelight, through the hearts that remember him not as a killer, but as a symbol of unyielding life. So when the fire dies down, when the world grows dark and quiet, don't mourn him. Look into the embers, and you'll see it, the faint flicker of his spirit, dancing, eternal. For the savage life of a Viking berserker was not just about conquest or bloodshed. It was about transformation, the endless cycle of destruction and creation, death and rebirth, chaos and peace. And that cycle continues, through you, through all of us, for as long as the wind still howls across the northern sea. Because though his body turned to ash long ago, his spirit became something far greater. It became the storm that never dies. And as the storm fades into silence, the world stands still, as if holding its breath in reverence for what once was. The cold air hums with a quiet power, carrying the last whispers of a time when men were made of fire and frost. The snow drifts softly across the empty plains, covering the scars of old battles, hiding the bones of heroes who gave everything for honor, for glory, and for something greater than themselves. But beneath that white silence, something still moves, not the body, but the memory. Not the man, but the meaning. The berserker is gone, yet his presence is woven into the rhythm of the earth itself. When thunder rolls across the sky, it is his roar. When the waves crash against the rocks, it is his fury reborn. When a man stands against impossible odds, when a woman refuses to yield to despair, when a child dreams of greatness in a world that tells them to kneel, that is him, rising again, unseen but undeniable. His legacy was never meant to live in stories or sagas, it was meant to live in the blood of those who came after. In us, for every age has its warriors. They may not wield axes or shields, but they fight all the same, in quiet rooms, in sleepless nights, in unseen battles of the soul. They carry the same fire, the same unbreakable will, the same storm within. That is the true inheritance of the berserker, not violence, but resilience, not rage, but the courage to feel deeply and stand unshaken in a world that tests every heartbeat. And if you listen closely, truly listen, you'll hear him. Not in the clash of swords, but in the silence between breaths. In the pulse beneath your ribs, steady and fierce. The world has forgotten his name, but his essence endures, carried by the wind, reflected in the eyes of those who refuse to surrender. Every tear, every scar, every scream swallowed by the dark becomes a verse in his eternal saga. As the night deepens, the aurora dances once more, waves of light rippling across the heavens, as if the gods themselves are remembering. In that shimmering glow, his silhouette flickers, broad shoulders, fierce eyes, a shadow that belongs to both man and myth. He does not fade, he watches. He waits. Not as a ghost bound by vengeance, but as a guardian of those who still burn with that primal fire. For though time may bury his body beneath centuries of silence, the berserker lives on in the soul of humanity, in every act of defiance, in every breath of hope, in every heartbeat that refuses to break. He is the eternal storm that teaches us to rise again, no matter how many times the world tries to break us. And so, as the winds quiet and the first light of dawn spills across the horizon, remember this, legends never die. They transform, they linger, they whisper through eternity. The savage life of a Viking berserker was not a story of rage or bloodlust, it was the story of becoming more than mortal. Of transcending pain, transcending fear, until nothing remains but will, pure, unyielding, immortal. And as the sky turns gold and the frost melts into morning, one truth remains, the berserker's fire still burns, somewhere, in the heart of the world. And in you. And as the world exhales its first breath of morning, the light spills over the horizon like a promise. The shadows that once ruled the night retreat into the folds of the mountains, their reign broken by the dawn. The snow glows faintly, shimmering like powdered gold, and for a moment, the land feels alive, as though every tree, every stone, every hidden river remembers the story that was just told. Somewhere beneath that blanket of white, the bones of warriors lie in perfect silence, their restless spirits now at peace. Yet, the air hums with an unseen energy, the heartbeat of something timeless. It is said that the gods do not weep for mortals, but on this morning, even the heavens seem to pause. The northern winds fall quiet, the sky softens into hues of amber and silver, and for the briefest moment, it feels as if the world itself bows its head in respect. The berserker, the storm, the fury, the fire, has become something greater than legend. He has become balance. His rage has turned to peace, his chaos to stillness, his wild heart to eternal rhythm. What once was destruction now breathes creation. And perhaps that is how all great stories end, not in death, but in transformation. Every life, no matter how savage or gentle, leaves behind echoes that ripple through eternity. The berserker's echo is not the roar of battle anymore, it's the soft whisper of courage in those who face their own storms. It's in the eyes of dreamers who refuse to wake, in the steps of wanderers who never stop searching for meaning. It's in the strength of every soul that stands unbroken, no matter how many times the world tries to shatter them. The screen opens on a sweeping view of the frozen north, endless snowfields stretching beneath a sky painted with the fading hues of dawn. The wind is soft now, carrying with it the ghostly echo of drums that once shook the heavens. The camera glides slowly across the ice, settling on a single mound of earth. A low, distant rumble stirs the silence, not thunder, but something older, deeper. The snow trembles. The light flickers. And then, for just an instant, a shadow moves across the horizon, tall, powerful, unmistakable. The shape of a man cloaked in furs, his silhouette burning like fire against the dawn. His breath steams in the cold, his hand resting over the handle of an unseen weapon. But there is no battle now, no fury left to unleash. His eyes, once wild with rage, are calm, ancient, wise, unbroken. The wind rises gently, swirling around him, lifting the snow into a halo of light. The drums fade into silence, replaced by a low hum, the heartbeat of the world itself. He looks toward the horizon, where the first light touches the sea, and slowly raises his head, as if greeting the gods one final time. A faint smile crosses his face, not of victory, but of peace. The camera drifts closer, and as the sunlight envelopes him, his form begins to dissolve, not into shadow, but into mist, into memory. The snow catches the light, sparkling like embers, as his spirit rises into the air, merging with the storm that gave him life. His voice echoes softly, almost like a prayer. The storm does not die. It becomes the wind that carries us forward. The scene fades to white, the light of dawn filling the screen completely. Then, slowly, in bold letters against the glow, appears the title. The Savage Life of a Viking Berserker. Beneath it, in quiet gold lettering. Legends never die. They only return. The wind howls one last time, not fierce, but eternal, and the screen fades to black.